Hey, and welcome back to the Build It Basement. Today, we're going to be kicking back into some Klipper configuration. Specifically, we're working on the tap configuration for our Voron 2.4 R2. Last time when we left off, we had just finished up doing our basic printer.cfg file. We've gone ahead and add the mainsail.cfg in there, and this time we're going to be getting directly into setting it up for tap. So modifications need to be done there, as we're basically getting rid of our Z-Endstop and making it the probe. We're getting rid of our probe and making it the nozzle. We're switching stuff in and out, right? So in a nutshell, it's gonna be a lot simpler for the printer itself, but to get to that simple part, we gotta cause ourselves a little bit of confusion. So let's jump right into it. So here we are, we got our printer config file. We should be getting pretty comfortable being in this right now. If you haven't seen the previous video where we went ahead and got this up to where we are right now, go back and take a look at that. I'll try to leave a card at the end of the video here with a link to that, and I'll try to put in the notes down below, but no guarantees. Sometimes I forget. So anyways, yeah, so we have our information here to make our printer work. We have our mainsail.cfg file, which is what we included last time. This is where we left off, that put a bunch of macros in, some of which that we definitely need and some of which that we don't necessarily need. So looking over here at our updating your Klipper config for tap. And again, going back down through this, we're going to update our end stop, update our homing position, and we're going to do the offsets, which are pretty much going to be nulled. And then we're going to add some tap G code. And that G code basically is looking at the current state of the printer and looking specifically at the nozzle. And if that nozzle is too hot, it's going to reduce the temperature of the nozzle so that we don't hurt our print bed. That being said, when we get to that point, I will point out, or at least I'll try to point out, again, I forget things, the temperature portion of that, you're going to see it's 150 degrees is what the standard is. But if you want to be extra safe, you can put down to 120. If you want to be a little bit more risky, you can put up to 180. Honestly, extruders kind of heat up pretty quickly these days, so I think 150 is fine. If you wanted to go lower, I'm fine with that. I probably wouldn't go higher. There's no need for it. So yeah, let's follow these steps step by step. And first thing we're going to do is I'm going to click in our config file over here. I'm going to hit Control F for control, or for the find. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to click and drag over Z-stepper block. Okay, so I'm going to hit copy with a right click on that, and I'm just going to go ahead and find that. Okay, so I can type that in if I am having trouble with the mouse, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit this next button now. So we're under the Z-stepper settings. So over here it says block. You'll want to comment out position end stop and change your end stop pins so it uses the virtual Z-Endstop for tap. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, so our end stop position, or position end stop, which is right here, we're going to go ahead and comment that out. And we're going to do that. And then what I like to do when I comment things out is I go ahead and put another pound symbol or hash symbol, depending on what you call. And I'm going to put basically out for tap not needed. You could write whatever you want in there, but basically if I uncomment this now in the future for some reason, that will stay, but my note would stay there and I could go back and forth with that. So little Klipper tip there. Yeah, so we got that. So next we have the comment out our end stop and our end stop pin. For our end stop pin, we're actually going to be changing it to this example, and we can use the example verbatim. So basically right here where it says end stop pin, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to select that. I'm going to hit backspace and I'm going to hit paste to paste that in. So basically we've now told the printer that we're going to use a virtual end stop versus using the actual Z-Endstop, and we've also told the printer, or we've stopped the printer from looking for that position of the end stop. Kind of have to sneeze here. Woo. Think I'm good. All right. So automatically save Z-stepper position end stop. That would be at the bottom of your printer config. If you're running on a fresh config, you haven't got that. If you did have that, it would be down here on the very bottom. It'd look kind of funny. It'd be like a gray color. Basically, it'd say don't modify this. And what it is things that the printer has written to itself for basically its own file. Those are your not micro stepping, but your your final Z heights, things like that, maybe some other things. If you run some other calibrations, it will put that data down the bottom of the file right there. We don't have it because this is a fresh Klipper file, so we don't need to do that. We can basically bypass that right there, but if you do, you need to go through here and do this. Okay, so updating our home, our Z homing position, so we need to find safe Z home, which we do have. I'm 99.9% sure. Right there. And again, I've selected that. I copied it and I pasted it. I hit next to find it. And basically, we want to make this the center of our bed. Our particular printer is a 300 by 300. Our center of our bed should be about 150 by 150, not negative. So 150 by 150. Make sure you get spacing right in there. So on a 300 printer, our middle is 150, 150. If you had a larger printer, you might be 175 or 175. Smaller printer, you know, you can do the math there too. 250, 125, 125. If you can't do the math, right? But you probably didn't make it this far if you couldn't do the math. So. Okay, so change the location center of your bed. You have homing override. Let's look to see if we do. Copy and V. Next. Yeah, we don't have that. I didn't think we did. So make sure that your bed goes to G28 your Z before you go to do that. G28 basically being a home, Z, G28Z be homing your Z portion of your printer. All right, so probe offsets. Here's kind of a big one because we no longer have any offsets on our probe, which is kind of awesome because talk about the simplification of things. Because before, and this is kind of something to wrap your head around. Before, when you had a probe on your printer, your probe was never where your nozzle was. It was off a little bit, both on your X and Y coordinates, normally or usually. So you had to basically tell the printer where that offset was so it would know where it's probing versus where the actual nozzle is. So it could basically take that into account when you're actually doing stuff with your printer. Your nozzle tends to be near the center of your tool head, whereas your probe sometimes can be behind your nozzle. In the sense of like a BL Touch, it's usually off to the side. You could be using a ton of different ways of actually probing your surface, and usually there's an offset to that. Again, with the tap, there is no offset because your nozzle is your probe. No offset, okay? All right, so we're looking for our probe X offset. That's the first thing we're gonna do. I'm gonna do that, type that in, and we'll go next. And why aren't we finding it? Copy. Maybe we don't have one. Let's see, remember your probe. We should have an offset. That's what happens whenever you record something live, right? So, and we don't have a Y offset either. Interesting. All right, let's do this. Let's go under our probe section and hit next and find our probe section. So sometimes you can't find something, you gotta dig a little bit deeper. It's a smart thing to do. So let's go ahead and we're in our probe section right here. And so it's basically slightly different because the way this wrote this down is basically telling you so in the probe section, X and Y. Good thing it happened to me, so it doesn't happen to you. So we found it in our probe section. We got our X and Y offsets right here. Right now our X offset is set to 0 because normally our probe is directly behind our hot end, or our nozzle, I should say. And our Y offset being 25, we're going to set that to 0. It can be 0.0 if you like, but I'm going to change it to plain old 0. Let's see here, and now value should be 0. Manually calibrate probe Z offset by doing probe calibrate, which we will do at the end of this. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to hit save and restart this now. And let's make sure we're still okay. Or at least we should be. There we go. Okay, so we're still okay. We haven't done anything wrong. Nothing's broken or anything like that. And at this point, we should be able to go ahead and home everything. Let me switch to, let's see, this guy. Got some plastic vibrating in this thing. Yep. So it just homed all of the XIs. So basically I just went out and it did a XY home and then a Z home. So as far as it's concerned, it's at home, right? So we're good. All right, so let's go back into our machine again and back into our printer.config file, okay? Brings us back to the top every time we open it, just another note. And the last portion of this is kind of the tricky portion of this. If you copy and paste this exactly, you're probably going to have issues, okay? So I've actually rewritten it a little bit, and I have it over here on the side, admittedly. And the reason I've done this is because, and actually, let me, once we write in, we'll compare the two. I haven't compared the two as to why that has some issues, but it has to do with the indents. I don't believe everything's indented properly. But I don't want to misspeak and tell you what's not done. So we're looking for our probe section here, and we can scroll down. This isn't a huge file if we want to. We're here now. If we wanted to, we could just look for probe, and then we're going to find a bunch of probe things, but we go through and change it. The file I have, or the text I have on my side here that I'm going to do in, is going to replace all this. So I'm going to hit back on that, and I'm going to hit paste on that. Okay, so what we've done is we've replaced what was there with this new information. And what I want to do is I want to compare this to that real quick. And we'll do it live because this is the kind of the Voron Bible over here. Okay, I see one thing so far, and that makes sense. And that's there. That doesn't matter. That's fine. And then that's with that. Yeah. So there's some indent issues here. Okay, so these indents right here are fine. Okay. That's just fine. This right here should be indented at least one space. It needs to be indented from the ones above it to function properly. And then this would be in line with the one above it because it's an else call. This portion right here telling you about what it's doing doesn't matter. It totally gets ignored. This right here would be fine, even if you indented those the one that you needed to, because it has looks like 3 or 4 indents on it, so it's fine there. And then underneath it, that's fine as well. And then finally, this right here should be in line with these two. Actually, yes, it should be in line with these two. Which also should be obviously indented a little bit. And then this right here, this end if, should be back in line with the originals. So if you look over here, this is back in line with the originals. This is in line with these actual primary statements, secondary statements, and then we'll call them tertiary statements. Basically, it's a hierarchy. So yeah, this is slightly wrong. This is correct. I will try to paste this. I don't know if it's going to work out in the description, but I will try to in the description to see if that works out well, and hopefully it saves somebody a headache. Now, I mentioned earlier about that temperature location for when you're doing your probing. So that temperature right here is 150. That's where it's set at. And again, you could go to 120 if you wanted to. You could go to 180. I wouldn't go to 1980. 120. 120 is decent, 150s. 150 is kind of the in-between temperature. It's not so hot, whereas it's going to kind of cause too much damage, but at the same time, you've got enough thermal expansion on your nozzle that it's going to help you out get an accurate count on that. So, and then right here, it's just basically calling out what it's doing and how it's working. So, I'm not going to go line by line on this, but that's what we have. So I'm going to hit save and restart, and hopefully, cross our fingers, it will work here. And sure enough, it does. Okay, let's go full screen on this now. We're all done with this document. I'm going to kind of shove it over here so I can take some information when I do the file. And let's do this. And so now we're looking at our mainsail GUI. Right here, you can see my, actually, let me show you that real quick. I'm kind of impressed by this. So I don't know if it's going to let me. No, I got to home it first. Let me home my Z real quick. I got to do X and Y first. All right, let's home everything first. Always forget that. Get some weird vibrations from these ACM panels. And I'm gonna move this. Ooh, it's kind of ghostly, isn't it? I'm gonna move this guy, this wackadoo right here, down towards here so we can see this camera shot too. And then I'm also going to do this. I'm going to turn on my case lights. So we got a little bit there we can see. Okay, and I'm gonna raise this bad boy up a little bit here. Let's go up. Let's go up. There we go. And isn't that neat? That is the nozzle cam. Now you'll note that my NeoPixels are not on, and that is a true statement. That's something we're going to get to relatively soon. Is basically go back over wiring the pins on those and whatnot. I'm kind of leaving it out right now because we're trying to do things in a certain order. But yeah, so that's a nozzle can there. We'll go into configuration with that, but I had to try that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's heat up this nozzle. Let's have the extruder to 165, and let's just get the bed up a few degrees. Let's go up to 45 degrees. Maybe we're printing PLA, right? Actually, if we were printing PLA, let's go up to 190. It's a random possible PLA temperature. It's only going to take a couple seconds. Like I said, nozzles heat up really quickly. Mind you, we haven't done any tuning yet either. So we're just doing a Klipper. Then when we do tuning, we'll go through some commands, some G-code commands in order to do that properly. Our PID tuning and things like that. So we're almost up. We're up there on the nozzle already. And we're almost there with the bed. Just another few seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a home and then a QGL. And if everything's working the way it should, the first thing it should do is drop, well, after it does the homing, it should drop the nozzle, the probe down to 150 degrees before it does its Z probe. So we're there now. Let's go ahead and try that out. So let's home everything. That's the other reason I wanted the camera on there, so you can kind of see that it's moving, because if I take off this screen and give you the other screen, you're not going to see what's happening on this screen. So those are XY, and look at that. See this right here in the commands? And now it's reading. It's actually dropping the temperature of our nozzle to 150. Which is actually, I think it takes more time for it to drop the nozzle temperature than it took to bring the nozzle temperature up. But we'll give it a second. I'll let it do its Z. But now that you can see that, let's go ahead and switch over to this camera. And then we should see that do its thing here in a few moments. Yep, there we go. And just for note, we're at 150.5, 150.3.1, 0.0, and it's Z-homed. Cool. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Another quick one on Klipper settings. This one's specific to the Voron tap and the modifications you need to make to your printer.cfg file to get that up and running. By no means is this 100%, meaning that there aren't other things you can do, but this will get you to the point where your actual tap will work with your Klipper configuration. lose my words a little bit. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't yet. I got a ton of Voron content on here. I'm hoping I get a ton more up here at some point, and I will continue with these Klipper configuration files as we move forward. Really looking out for a upcoming sequence of videos for an upgrade to my old Voron 2.4 to an R2, complete rebuild with maintenance on it. So we're going to see what requires maintenance, what's happened over the past 2,000 or so hours of printing, and what needs to get fixed, what doesn't, what needs to get lubed, what doesn't, what is junk, and what we need to replace on that Voron kit, right? So anyways, I've had fun making the video. Hopefully you enjoy watching it. If you have questions, by all means, comment down below, and I will see you next time.